Doctrine of Eclipse. Let's dive into the doctrine of Eclipse and understand its relevance in the context of the Indian Constitution. Think of this doctrine as a bridge that connects old laws which were created before our Constitution to the new world of fundamental rights introduced by the Constitution. Here is how it works and why it is important today. What is the doctrine of Eclipse? Imagine you have an old law from before the Constitution was enacted. When the Indian Constitution came into force in 1950, it introduced fundamental rights that every law had to comply with. If an old law conflicted with these new rights, it did not get completely erased. Instead, the conflicting part of the law gets eclipsed, much like how the moon can cover the sun during a solar eclipse. The law is not gone, it's just overshadowed and unenforceable as long as the conflict with the fundamental rights exists. This doctrine ensures that we respect our fundamental rights while also maintaining legal continuity and flexibility. Let's see how. First one is the supremacy of fundamental rights. When the Constitution declares a law as violating fundamental rights, that law gets overshadowed. This means our fundamental rights always take precedence. So if there is a pre-Constitution law that contradicts these rights, it won't be enforceable as long as the conflict remains. Second one is legal continuity. We don't discard the entire law. The law is not scrapped entirely. This is crucial because it means we don't have to create new laws every time we encounter an old law that doesn't quite fit with our new constitutional values. Instead, we just update the parts that conflict. Third one is flexibility. This doctrine adds flexibility. If there is ever an amendment to the Constitution that changes the fundamental rights, the eclipsed law can come back into play. This way, the legal system can adapt over time without constant re-legislation. To better understand this, let's look at a couple of landmark cases. Bikaji Narain Thakras vs. State of Madhya Pradesh 1955. This case was a turning point. Here an old Motor Vehicle Act conflicted with new fundamental rights. The Supreme Court said this law is not dead, just dormant. When an amendment to the Constitution removed the conflict, the law came back into action. This showed that laws could be revived and remain useful without needing complete reenactment. Another case is State of Gujarat vs. Ambika Mills in 1974. This case extended the doctrine further. The court ruled that even laws made after the Constitution could be eclipsed if they conflicted with fundamental rights and revised if the inconsistency was removed later. This broadened the scope of the doctrine of eclipse, showing its flexibility and adaptability. In today's legal landscape, the doctrine of eclipse still plays a crucial role. Let's see why. First one is adaptive legal system. India's laws can adapt without constant re-legislation. For example, if a fundamental right is interpreted differently by the judiciary over time, the related laws can adjust accordingly without being scrapped entirely. Protection and flexibility. This doctrine ensures that citizens' rights are protected while also ensuring that the legal system remains stable and consistent. Laws that might seem outdated today can be reactivated if future amendments or judicial interpretations align them with the current constitutional ethos. Next one is practical governance. For lawmakers and the judiciary, the doctrine of eclipse offers a practical tool. It allows for a nuanced approach where laws are not hastily invalidated but can be revisited and revised. This is especially useful in a diverse and evolving society like India's. To conclude, the doctrine of eclipse is a smart legal mechanism that balances respect for fundamental rights with the need for a continuous and adaptable legal framework. It acknowledges the supremacy of the Constitution while ensuring that our legal system is not thrown into chaos every time there is a constitutional amendment or a new interpretation of fundamental rights. This makes it a key feature in the ongoing evolution and stability of India's legal landscape, ensuring that old laws can be retained and adopted rather than discarded outright. It is like keeping a vintage car in the garage. You may need to upgrade it to meet modern safety standards, but you don't necessarily have to send it to the junkyard.